Hello, everyone. My name is Katy of Greenland Quilter, and I have a new guest for my channel. Her name is, should I ask you what you how to pronounce her name? Well, I might accidentally butcher it. Her name is Vickiedy of Sophie. And would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about yourself?
Yes, I would love to. First of all, thank you so much for having me. My name is actually Vickiedy of So Spicious, and I am a quilter in New York City, a pattern writer, pattern designer. And yeah, I've been in New York City for about 20 years now. I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic, and I am a teacher by day.
What do you teach?
I teach Spanish to high school students who are newly arrived immigrants to the country. So students who are in the position that I used to be when I first migrated to the United States.
So who influenced you to want to learn to sew, and how young were you when you started, and what type of sewing did you start out with?
Yeah, so I guess the inspiration comes from my family. I am a fourth generation sewist. So my great grandmother used to sew, my grandmother used to sew. My mother grew up in that environment, so she learned to sew. She studied fashion design. She used to run a business outside of our house, making clothing for people, and I grew up in that environment as well. I used to work with her for a little bit, like doing hems or ironing or putting buttons on clothing, whatever she needed. That was an easy or fairly easy task. And so, yeah, I grew up in that environment. I never picked it up when I was young. So I actually started quilting in 2018. It was my New Year's resolution 2018 to learn how to quilt.
Um, has your ethnicity influenced the way you create and design your clothes?
So my culture is a very vibrant culture. It's a lot of colors, it's loud music, it's a lot of vivid imagery, and I try to implement that in my quilt as much as possible. I quilt with very bright colors. I'm not a muted Instagram aesthetic kind of person. I like what I like, and what I like is really bright colors. So I try to influence or bring my culture into my quilting in that way.
You mentioned that you've been doing this since 2018. How has it evolved from the beginning to now?
So I first started with refurbishing vintage sewing machines. I actually bought a machine for my mother because it reminded me of a machine that she used to have in the Dominican Republic. Back in the Dominican Republic, the electricity would be in and out during hours of the day, and she had orders to process. So she had a treadle, and she used to sew on that treadle a lot. And when we here in the United States, I saw a machine on Facebook that looked a lot like that one that she had. It didn't work, so I bought it. And I was looking up on YouTube and Google how to make it run, what I needed to do to fix it up. And I did. I presented it to her as a gift. And she's like, I have way too many machines. You should keep this one. And so I did. And first I caught the bug with refurbishing machines, flipping them and selling them. Then I started with making a garment or two for myself, and I didn't really enjoy that too much. And then I bought a small sewing machine called the Singer Featherweight 221, and I was researching it to fix it up. And I learned that it was the perfect machine for piecing and for quilters. And I did not know what a quilter was, so I Googled it, and I fell in love and have been quilting ever since.
Tell us about your teaching history, and has it influenced how you create quilts as well as design them, and have you used your teaching skills to teach others how to make quilts?
So I have been, well, I'm not teaching this year. I took a leave because I am a new mother, and well, my daughter's 3 now, and I was really struggling with my mental health. So I had to take a year off from teaching. So I'm not teaching at the moment. But when I went back to teaching after I had my baby, I was doing a quilt club with my students, or a sewing club, we used to call it. And so we did a few like zipper bags or stuffies and scrunchies and things like that. We were working our way to a quilt, and then the pandemic hit, and no, that was after the pandemic. Then the funding ended, and I couldn't do it anymore. And I was really struggling. So I just couldn't do all of that. But in terms of how I write my patterns, I like to write my patterns the way that I teach a lesson, which is I take the whole concept by itself and then break it down in digestible chunks or smaller pieces so that people who are reading or doing that pattern are able to understand all the pieces of it before you have to look or do the whole piece in itself.
That sounds really cool. What do you love most about quilt creation?
What I like the most about quilt creation is being able to express myself and express what I'm doing at the moment. I also like that it's something that it just zens me. So when I'm sewing, I'm not worried about anything else that's happening around me. I'm worried about what my quilt is going to be and what the final product is going to be. So I like to just sit there, enjoy the process, take as much time as I need, and just do that on my own timing and my own pacing, rather than how our daily lives usually are. I live in New York City, so you have to constantly be going and moving and moving. The quilting zens me and makes me sit down, concentrate, take it slow, and I enjoy that a lot.
Oh, cool. What quilt making style do you prefer? Traditional, modern, or both? And why?
I am a modern girly. I like modern quilts. I like geometric quilts. I like symmetry. I like a light, maybe even white background on bright colors. So that's my style. That's what I like the most.
What fabric style do you find yourself using more often? Do you use batiks or Philippines or 18th century production? What is your jam?
I am a solids girl. I love to sew with solids, and my preferred manufacturer is Art Gallery Fabrics. I'm actually an ambassador for them this year, and I really love their fabric, the feel of it, how soft it is, how high quality the materials are. So yeah, I'm a solids girl.
Yeah, our gallery is very soft. How many quilts have you made since the beginning? And can you show us one of your quilts? Which we talk about doing the pictures. So stay tuned, guys. I'll share pictures of that. But how
Since
many
20,
made?
I want to say since 2018, I've made more than 50 quilts.
Wow.
I don't have an exact number, but I started with making quilts for other people as gifts. So my very first one was for my goddaughter. My second one was for my nephew. And I made a bunch to gift new babies, new family members. And then people saw my quilting, wanted me to make quilts for them. So I would just ask them to buy me the materials and I would make the quilt that they wanted. And yeah, I've been quilting so much that it's more than 50 at this point.
What does your family think about you being a quilt creator? Are any of your family members interested in the quilt making process?
My mom is actually very proud and excited that I'm actually doing something with sewing arts because she studied fashion design and she did sewing my whole life. And I never did at the time. So now that I'm an adult and I picked it up later in life, she's actually excited to see that it's passing on within her family and another generation is picking it up. She loves that it's quilting because it's different than what she grew up doing. And so it's just a brand new branch on our family tree.
That's good. Can you tell us about your brand and business and how you started it and how it's changed over time? What were your beginning goals and has that changed since?
Yeah, so I started Suspicious with my best friend. Her name is Morgan. We used to teach at the same school. And when I did the New Year's resolution to make a quilt, he actually bought the exact same quilt kit and we worked on it together. So at the beginning, Suspicious was just an Instagram page for us to show the quilts that we were working on at the moment, the machines that we were buying and fixing up, and just showing those things. And then after a while, in 2022, after I've made so many quilts, I wanted to make a quilt by someone who looked like me, a designer of color. And there were not that many that I saw available. And so that's what inspired me to actually take a pattern writing class and start writing my own patterns. And so that's how Suspicious has evolved from the beginning till now.
How did you get chosen to be one of the designers for the Stronger Together 2024?
They just sent me a message via DM on Instagram and my email account. So they sent me both. And the person that reached out said that she had seen my Instagram account, that she liked what I do, and she wanted me to be part of the group of designers that they were selecting for the Stronger Together Quilt Along 2024.
So can you tell everybody what the Stronger Together is about?
Yes, so Stronger Together is sponsored by the Qaqortoq, and it's for Black History Month. This year they're doing it to honor Ruby. Oh wait, hold on. I know her last name. Whew,
Hang on.
whoa, it's escaping me. Ruby Bridges. Ruby Bridges, yeah, sorry. It's my pregnancy brain. Is to honor Ruby Bridges, and she was one of the first students to integrate at school. She was a student of color, a young girl at the time, and she went to an all-white school. And the Quilt Along is to raise funds for UNCF, which is United Negro College Fund, and all proceeds from the Quilt Along and from the donations will be matched by Qaqortoq and then donated to this fund to help students of color pay for college and continue on their higher education.
Yeah, so the pattern is free, and I will post the link down in the description box. But please donate at least $15 and more when you're downloading it. There's a link on the Qaqortoq where you can do that at. Help raise the funds so students can go to college, because that is very important these days.
Yes, and there's also we created a quilt kit with all the fabrics and all the colors that you need to create this very specific quilt. Like you said, and you mentioned, it's completely free. All you have to do is make a donation. And if you want to, you can buy the quilt kit, or you can use your own fabrics to make the quilt as well.
Yep. Have you met the other designers of the Stronger Together?
I have. Actually, there's three of us. Is Cherise Nicole, Mary Davis, and Durester. I forget her last name, but we all met in person last year during QuiltCon.
Right.
Yeah, the Quilt Along was not in. It was not. We were not thought about it or talked about that yet. And I just happened to meet this women. We're all women of color. Mary Davis, Cherise, and I are in a group chat where we help and support each other, see where we are in our planning, and just lift each other up with what we're doing. Share opportunities that may come along for quilters whenever there's like an ambassador call or anything that's happening. You know, we just lift each other up and push each other to apply and do it. And Mary Davis is actually the person who pushed me and inspired me to start writing patterns because I was very hesitant about it. And she reached out to me. She used to have a membership where she would highlight designer of colors. Unfortunately, she had to close it down at the beginning of this year. It was called the Merry-Go-Round membership. And she's the one who pushed me. She wanted me to be one of her featured designers. She's the one that told me about the pattern writing course, and here I am, thanks to her. I love those women. They are great, and they really inspired me to do what I'm doing, to keep pushing forward and going. So it's a great group
all
of women.
Y'all inspiring, to be honest.
Thank you.
Can you tell us how you decided on what block design you were going to use for the Stronger Together?
So I wanted something to represent like lifting each other with a strong base, because I believe the education is the base that you need in order to succeed as a teacher myself. You know, so I wanted something that lifts up and has a strong base, and that's how I, playing around with different designs, came up with a design for my block. So this is the whole quilt. It is not finished yet. This is still missing the borders. And my block is the upward block, and it's this one right here, where you can see there's a base and there's building on each other, going up and moving forward, which is the inspiration for my quilt. Thank you.
I'm going to do mine in batiks.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so Are there any other hobbies or endeavors that you pursue?
Other hobbies besides chasing my 3-year-old around the house. I am an avid listener of podcasts and audiobooks. I love listening to an audiobook when I'm working on a quilt, because it just gets me to really concentrate, and I feel like I'm being very productive. I'm doing something with my hands, but also reading at the same time. I've actually started doing some EPP at the moment, which is English paper piecing. And there's this pattern I want to work on. Like I said before, I'm expecting a baby, and I know that I won't have a lot of time in my machine, but having an EPP project already prepared is my dream for when the baby's here and I can get some time for myself, do some EPP at the time.
Good, that's a really good idea. How did you come up with the name Suspicious as your brand name?
So this is a very long story. Like I said, I started Suspicious with my best friend Morgan, and we used to get together every Monday before the pandemic to watch The Bachelor, which is that dating show in the United States. And we did that for years. And when we started fixing machines and we started looking into quilting together, and we wanted an Instagram page, we didn't know what we were going to call it. So we went through a whole list of different names. And then we were at a friend's house watching The Bachelor, and somebody said, "Oh, I don't like that guy. He's very suspicious." And I was like, "Oops." And that's when the light bulb like turned on for both of us at the same time. And so we like the play of words in suspicious and being a suspicious person. And that's where it came from.
Backtrack back to hobbies. What is your most favorite audible that you like to listen to?
Audiobook?
Did you listen to Audible? So what Audible author do you listen to?
I don't have one specific author I listen on audiobooks, but I am a fan of Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He's the Colombian writer. I love his work. I love to listen to it in Spanish because I feel like his work sounds so much better in his native tongue and my native tongue. So he's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Okay, that was the question I couldn't remember I was going to ask. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to have a little fun, and we're going to do rapid fire, which means you have to think on your feet.
Okay, let's do it.
So the first one is, what 5 skills should a beginner quilter learn about to help them become good quilt makers as they learn?
Five skills.
Yes.
How to read a whole pattern, the whole pattern before you start a quilt. That's very important. You need to know, or you need to practice your 1/4 inch seam. That's very critical when making a quilt. And make sure that the pattern doesn't call for a scant 1/4 inch, because there's a difference between the two. What else? How to saw a straight line. That's very important. And how to use your rotary cutter and your rulers to actually cut your fabric straight in the way that it needs to be cut.
Okay. What 5 tools would you suggest every beginner quilter maker? Let me try to suggest 5 tools that every beginner quilt maker should start out with, and why?
Well, you need a machine. It doesn't have to be all fancy. It doesn't have to have all the bells and whistles. As long as it's a functional machine, that is something that you need. Same with an iron and an ironing surface. Doesn't have to be a wool mat. Any good old ironing surface will work. What else? A rotary cutter, a ruler, and pins. You need to pin when you start so that your points match and your fabric doesn't shift and move around. Pins are very important.
Okay. What is the hardest thing about quilt making and quilting, and why?
The hardest thing for me is settling on the color palette that I want, because there's so many options and there's so many different color combinations that you can do, and it's just like looking for a Netflix show, when you have so many choices. It's so hard to pinpoint the one that you want. And for me, I am very indecisive sometimes, and I can go through like 4 or 5 different fabric pools before I settle into what I want. And so I feel like that's where I waste the most time.
Yeah, I have that same problem. What advice would you give to a beginner quilter?
My advice would be don't worry about your points matching or your like seams being perfectly lined up. I've been quilting since 2018. I know that's not as long as people who have been quilting for decades, but some of my seams don't match, or some of my points at this point in my career don't match. And I still have a successful, useful, warm quilt that I can either keep for myself or give to somebody else. So don't worry or don't sweat those little things, because that's not what it's going to make your quilt beautiful. It's the work that you're putting into it and the love that you're putting into your quilt that counts.
That's a good piece of advice. Do you have any other advice that you would like to share with quilters? That means any quilter, not just beginners.
Make sure that you start your fabric before you start cutting your fabric. I am an avid believer in starting your fabrics to prevent it from distorting when, especially if you're doing curves.
Okay. So these are all the questions I was going to ask you. Is there anything else you would like to share about yourself or your company?
One more thing I wanted to say is make sure that you look up or look for designer of colors, because we are here. I know a lot of what we see on Instagram is usually Caucasian designers, but designers of color are here. We're putting in the work, we're designing, we're creating beautiful pieces. So look for us, support us, buy our patterns. And if you cannot afford a pattern at the moment, share our work with other people so that we are also seen as a member of the quilting community and a contributing members as well. Yes, and thank you so much for having us and highlighting us, and especially the group that are designing with the StrongerTogether. We really appreciate you doing that with the group.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm all about Stronger Together. I've been talking about that for the last 3 years now because I just think that it helps expose get people to open their eyes. Thank you for coming for my interview, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow night. So, okay, so everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming for the interview as well, and I'll see everybody later.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.